Alright, so now that we have Node.js installed on our system, we're going to take a look at some very simple code, and we're also going to talk a little bit about NPM and what that is. Alright, so first of all, let's go to the nodejs.org website and click on the About link up here. Alright, so this is going to give us a really simple example of an extremely simple web server that is basically just going to serve up some text for us. Alright, so let's take a look at the code here. This first line we have const HTTP. So what this is, we're just defining a variable called HTTP, and we're defining it as a constant, alright, because it's not going to change. And we're setting that to require HTTP. And what this does, it's including the HTTP module. Okay, whenever you see require, it's either including a module or it's including another file. Alright, then here we have hostname and port constants. Okay, our hostname is going to be our local host, and then port is 1337. Alright, down here we're taking that HTTP module and using the create server method or create server function, and that takes in a request and response parameter. Down here we're using the write head method of the response, and we're giving it a status of 200, which means everything's okay, and we're also setting the content type to text/plain. Alright, and then here we're going to end the response, and we're just going to basically just echo out hello world in the browser. Alright, and then we have to say .listen and pass in the port and host name. Alright, and then once that happens, we can just console log, letting the user know that the server is running. Alright, so that's what this piece of code does. It's very, very simple, and we're actually going to run it and see how it works. Alright, before we do that, I just want to go over to npmjs.com and show you this website. It's basically a repository for all of the Node package modules. Alright, so you have modules that are extremely simple, all the way up to a module like Express, which is an entire HTTP server and framework. Alright, which we'll get into later on. Now you can install these from your command line. If you have Node installed, you also have NPM, and we'll get into that a little later. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to open up, let's see, a folder. I'm going to go to I want to go to my C drive. Alright, and then I have a folder there called projects. Alright, and I'm going to create another folder in here called simple server. Alright, so this will be our application folder. Now, all of our Node applications need to have a file called package.json, which is a JSON file that holds a lot of different information, such as the application name, description, and it also includes we have to list all the dependency modules that we want to use. So we could create that manually, but we can also use the command line. Alright, so I'm going to use my git bash tool and just go right into that folder. Alright, and what we'll do to create that file, we'll say npm init. Okay, that'll initialize a series of questions. So the app name, whatever's in parentheses, is the default, so that's fine, we'll keep that. Version, that's good. Description, we'll just say very simple server. Entry point, you could call this what you want. I like to call it server.js. Okay, you don't need any of those. Author, you could put your own name. Alright, so it's going to just verify that stuff, and we'll click enter. And now you'll see that we have this file package.json. So let's go ahead and open that up and take a look at it. I'm using Sublime Text, but of course you could use whatever editor you want. So you can see we have all that information, the name, version, all of that. Now if we were using something like, let's say, Express or some other kind of Node module, we'd have to put that in our dependencies here. Alright, but we'll get into that a little later. So we have our package.json file. Now let's go ahead and create the server.js. Alright, so we're going to open that up. I'm just going to make Sublime my default real quick. Whoops, no, that's not what I want. Alright, so what we'll do is go to that about page and just copy this block of code. Alright, we're just going to paste that in this file. And we're going to save that. And let's go back into our command line. And what we want to do is we want to say node and then the name of the file. You could either say server or you could do server.js. Alright, and you can see that now it's running. Let me just make this a little bigger. Alright, so server is running at, and then it's our local host, port 1337. Alright, so let's go ahead and check that out in the browser. So we can say localhost 1337. Alright, and we get hello world. So this is in fact a Node application that we're running. Now, a lot of times you'll see, instead of writing Node server, you'll see NPM start. Alright, if I do that, it does the same thing. Alright, so you could either use Node and then the file name, the base server file name, or NPM start. So there you go. Very, very simple application. Doesn't do much. In the next video, I'll show you how we can actually serve HTML files instead of just serving some text like this. Alright, so we'll get into that next.